everyone. Now we will have our 7th week lecture today, which is International Trade Theory. So let's start with learning objectives. Understand why nations trade with each other, what there is international business transaction. Summarize the different theories and explain trade flows between nations. Recognize why many economists believe that unrestricted free trade between nations will raise economic welfare, and if countries that participate in a free trade system, the benefits. And also understand the important implications of the international trade theory holds for business. So let's start with a video which summarizes all, then we can have in-depth explanation of it.
To explain why countries trade, we must look at a little economic theory.
The first concept we'll consider is called the theory of absolute advantage. If a country has the absolute advantage in the production of a good or service, it means it's the most efficient producer of that product. In other words, if all countries use the same inputs in their production process, this country would be able to make more, better quality products than all the others. Let's construct a simplified theoretical example to illustrate the point.
Imagine for a moment that we live in a world where there are only two countries, South Africa and Japan. Now, both countries have differing capabilities to produce two products, wheat and DVDs. Now, over a certain time period, South Africa can either produce 55 bags of wheat or 11 DVDs using all their resources. Japan, on the other hand, can either produce 18 bags of wheat or 72 DVDs using all the available inputs that they have. So, knowing that each country must choose how to allocate its resources between the production of these two goods, does it make sense for South Africa to produce any DVDs?
The answer is no. Japan is obviously much more efficient in the production of DVDs than South Africa, while South Africa is much more efficient in the production of wheat than Japan. But both countries need both products, so it makes sense for South Africa to provide Japan with South African grown wheat in exchange for DVDs made in Japan.
If each country concentrates on producing what it's naturally good at, if they specialize in that good, both countries can then trade with each other and end up with more of both products than if they try to produce it all themselves. The consumers in both countries also benefit because they will be buying products made by the most efficient producer.
And according to the economic theory, it means that the price paid for these products should be the cheapest. Why? Well, because the producers making the two products are the most efficient at it and can make more of the product for less than their competitors. Remember that as a consumer, you will not buy the same product from a seller who's more expensive. So the economic principle of absolute advantage is that you should specialize in the production of something that you're good at making. You will be efficient in the production of that good or service, and the price you sell at will be the most competitive. Now, why is this considered so important in economics?
Well, remember, economics is all about satisfying unlimited wants and needs. How can we get all of the things we want with such limited resources? Resources we really can't afford to waste through inefficient production.
Okay, let's try and take the theory a bit further. According to this new table, we assume that South Africa has an absolute advantage with both products. It can efficiently produce either wheat or DVDs. Looking at this new data, it would seem that there is no longer any reason for trade between these two countries. But this is not quite true. Let's see why.
Remember that each country must decide how to allocate its resources. In a simplified example, we'll say that if South Africa concentrates all of its resources on DVD production, it can make 8 DVDs. But this means losing out on the wheat. And if they focus all their efforts on wheat production, they can produce 40 bags, while sacrificing any DVD production. The best way to help South Africa decide how to allocate resources is to calculate how much it costs to make one DVD. Comparatively, how much wheat does South Africa have to give up to make one DVD? It's not too tricky. Divide 40 by 8, which gives us 5. So for each DVD we produce, we could have grown 5 bags of wheat. In other words, each DVD we make costs South Africa 5 bags of wheat. Now, over in Japan, if they choose to produce 4 DVDs, they can't produce any wheat because of their limited resources. And if they focus on just producing the 8 bags of wheat, there's nothing left for DVD production. Doing the maths, 8 divided by 4, we can see that it will cost Japan 2 bags of wheat to make 1 DVD. So, comparing the cost of production in both countries, South Africa has to give up 5 bags of wheat for each DVD it makes, while in Japan it only costs 2 bags of wheat to make 1 DVD.
So DVDs cost more in terms of bags of wheat given up in South Africa than they do in Japan. Or in less clumsy language, it's cheaper for Japan to make DVDs, so Japan should make the DVDs. And it also makes sense that South Africa should produce the wheat. And that's the theory of comparative advantage. Remember, don't let the numbers confuse you. They're just used to help us understand the theory. If you need to.
So why is free trade beneficial? Let's start what the free trade is. This is a situation where a government doesn't attempt to inflate the trade through quotas or duties. So what its citizens can buy from another country or what they can produce and sell another country without any restriction. So there are no tax, no quotas or no limitations. Trade theory shows why it is beneficial for a country to engage in international trade. Even for the products it is able to produce itself. So even if you can produce a product, you will be willing to buy it imported from another country because they might have absolute advantage or comparative advantage, as the video also explained to us. So international trade allows a country to specialize in the manufacture and export of products and services that it can produce efficiently and effectively. Import products and services that can be produced more efficiently in other countries. And also limits on imports may be beneficial to producers, the local ones, but not beneficial for consumers because there will be less opportunities, less consumer choice. So the quality also may be decreased if the local domestic producers feel that they are the only option. So what role does government have in trade? The mercantilist philosophy makes a crude case for government involvement in promoting exports and limiting imports. So Smith, Ricardo and Heskerohin promote unrestricted free trade. They say that there should be free trade. New trade theory, Porter's theory of national competitive advantage, justify limited selective government intervention to support the development of certain export-oriented industries. So let's look at what is mercantilism. This theory suggests that in a country's best interest to maintain a trade surplus to export more than it imports, so they will have positive balance of payments. So it advocates government intervention to achieve a surplus in the balance of trade. So they tell that, okay, governments needs to be in there to maintain a trade surplus. So this views trade as a zero-sum game, one in which a gain by one country results in a loss of another country. Okay, we also have Smith's theory of absolute advantage. So Adam Smith, probably you heard about, argued that a country has absolute advantage in the production of a product when it is more efficient than any other country producing it. So when you become able to produce a product, for example, coffee beans, Brazil you can sell, so they got absolute advantage on it. So those countries should specialize in the production of goods for which they have an advantage and then trade those goods for goods produced by other countries. So in a way, every nation will have a specific absolute advantage and they will trade each other those different goods. We also have Ricardo's theory of competitive advantage. David Ricardo asks, what happens when a country has absolute advantage in production of all goods? So what will happen if a country can also produce milk, coffee beans, and wood? So the theory of comparative advantage argues that countries should specialize in the production of those goods they produce efficiently and buy the goods that they produce less efficiently from other countries. So even this means buying goods from other countries that they could produce more efficiently at home. So let's see another video which will highlight the points we discussed.
Let me tell you about the island of Tasmania. It's about 130 miles off the coast of southeastern Australia. A long time ago, when seas were low, Tasmania was part of Australia. During that time, the archaeological record documents that Tasmanians fished and they used bone tools. About 10,000 years ago, rising waters cut Tasmania off from Australia. On at least 3 of the smaller islands, the isolated human population died out completely. In Tasmania, the 4,000 hunter-gatherers remained with no contact with the rest of humanity at all. They lost technologies they once had. No more fishing, no more bone tools. They also missed new inventions such as stone tools and fishing nets and fire that were adopted in Australia. When Europeans discovered the Tasmanians in 1642, they found that this extreme isolation had created the simplest material culture of any people in the modern world. Without access to other people, some island populations shrink, others even vanish. Fortunately for most of us, human cooperation has expanded over time. As we saw in the previous videos, we enjoy enormous benefits from specialization in trade. One reason for this beneficial cooperation is what economists call comparative advantage. 2 things are surprising about comparative advantage. First, just by rearranging who does what, we can make more stuff through specialization in trade, even if no one ever gets any better at doing any line of work. But the second insight's my favorite. If you get better at doing something, that obviously benefits you, but it also benefits me, even though my abilities to produce haven't changed at all. Let me show you how this works. It's best seen with a simple example. Just 2 people, Bob and Ann, who produce just 2 goods, bananas and fish. Here's what Bob can do if he spends all of his time producing only 1 good. Bob can either gather 10 bananas, or he can catch 10 fish. Ann can either gather 10 bananas, or catch 30 fish. So let's say they each split their time between producing bananas and fishing. Bob and Ann each produce 5 bananas, Bob produces 5 fish, and Ann produces 15 fish. In total, they produce 10 bananas and 20 fish. You math wizards in the audience surely see an obvious way to increase this total. If Bob produces just bananas and Ann produces just fish, then the total rises to 10 bananas and 30 fish. So just by rearranging who does what, we get more total stuff. Now you might think this outcome is simply the result of the division of labor that we covered previously, but you'd be wrong. The key insight from the division of labor is that workers individually get more productive when they specialize. Yet in this scenario, neither Bob nor Ann has gotten any better at producing bananas or fish. Just by rearranging what tasks each does is what made total production increase. The key to understanding how this works is opportunity cost. Bob has to choose to gather bananas or catch fish. When he chooses to gather a banana, he gives up 1 fish. In essence, Bob trades with himself. He can use his time to gather bananas or trade that time to catch fish. And the cost of that trade is 1 fish per banana. That's Bob's opportunity cost. The same holds true for Ann, but her cost of producing 1 banana is 3 fish. In the amount of time that it takes Ann to gather 1 banana, she could have caught 3 fish. She trades with herself, 1 banana for 3 fish. So Bob only has to give up 1 fish to produce 1 banana, but Ann must give up 3 fish to produce a banana. Anne's opportunity cost of gathering a banana is higher than Bob's. She can improve her situation if she can get bananas for less than 3 fish, and Bob can improve his situation if he can get fish for less than 1 banana. Let's say Anne trades 2 fish to Bob for 1 banana. They each gain. If Anne wants a banana, she can either gather it herself and give up 3 fish, or she can catch only 2 fish and then trade them to Bob. She prefers the lower cost option, and so she trades. Bob prefers the lower cost option too. Instead of giving up a whole banana to catch a fish, he can trade that banana for 2 fish. Now he's only giving up a half a banana for a fish. You can see that even if Anne is better at everything, nothing in this story changes. She still benefits from trade because the number of fish Anne gives up to pick a banana herself is greater than the number of fish that she must catch and give to Bob in order to get a banana from Bob. Now for an insight that is really counterintuitive. What happens if Anne gets better at fishing? Let's say that she can now catch 40 fish. Obviously that's good for Anne, but it also means that bananas just got more costly for Anne to produce herself. She now has to sacrifice 4 fish for each banana that she gathers. By becoming a better fisherman, Anne becomes a comparatively worse banana gatherer. And this fact helps Bob. The reason is that Anne is now willing to trade more fish for each banana that she gets from Bob. So although Bob's ability to produce hasn't changed, he can now get more fish for his bananas. Comparative advantage is a beautiful thing. No matter what my talents are, I can still help you, even if you are better at everything. The more different we are from each other, the more we benefit from trading with each other. Let's get back to the real world. What comparative advantage practically means for most people is that we each spend most of our working time at a job that utilizes each of our comparative talents. How do you know what you're comparatively good at? What you get paid for your job tells you that. Comparative advantage is the main force driving us to use our talents in those jobs that we do best. It's why people who are good at math tend to become engineers, and those who have a good graphic sense tend to go into the arts. Specialization and trade play key roles in the movement from poverty to prosperity. We would be desperately poor without them, but they alone do not explain the full extent of our prosperity. Another feature of the modern world is important: innovationism. Our society is an orgy of innovations. This innovationism would be impossible without specialization and trade, and yet, specialization and trade do not guarantee innovationism. This is a topic for a future video.
So is unrestricted free trade always beneficial? So if we remove all the gates and borders, what will happen? Unrestricted free trade is beneficial, but the gains may not be as great as the simple model of comparative advantage would suggest. So we will have immobile resources, diminishing returns, dynamic effects and economic growth, but opening a country to trade could increase a country's stock of resources as increased supplies become available from abroad. The efficiency of resource utilization and so free up resources for other uses. Economic growth might be affected, so these are the points that needs to be considered when we are dealing with international trade. There are arguments that the free trade allows comparative advantage, absolute advantage, and the nations need to be focused on the goods they can do, but also there are some disadvantages which needs to be considered. So these are the references we have, and in case if you have any questions, please feel free to email or send a message from the online portal we have. See you next week.